Hey y'all, thanks for joining me. Well, it looks like the war in Iran, part 3, has begun this evening. Here's a news story on that. Not too long ago, half hour or so ago. At the direction of the Commander-in-Chief, says CENTCOM, U.S. Central Command forces have started conducting additional strikes against Iran to further degrade their ability to threaten freedom of navigation in the Strait of Hormuz. The United States is holding Iran accountable for recent blah, 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 blah. So, the U.S. has attacked areas of Iran. They say their air defenses were engaging hostile targets, quote unquote, near the port city of Bandar Abbas. Earlier today, Trump, talked about, he may take Karg Island again. He brings that up every few weeks, off and on at this type of talk. Today he called the Iranian people sick and scum. So again, when he changes to this type of horrific rhetoric, that's not how a president should speak, and supposedly in negotiations, then you know that some strike is coming. And according to Dialogue Works, Nima, the Iranians in retaliation hit Qatar and Bahrain, the U.S. bases there in Qatar and Bahrain. Once again, there's an air campaign going on, an air campaign as well as a naval campaign. So they're bombing from the air and from carrier ships. The U.S. has a way, they have phases that they do their campaigns. So they start with in the air and by sea, and then eventually they get to ground. So what I understood by what I read today is that the U.S. is trying to break down the defenses of Iran. That's what I'm understanding is really the motivation of why there is the airstrikes going on and strikes from naval carriers. So that's how these operations work. So look that up, and that's how it works. Also, he said the ceasefire is over, so that 60-day deal is gone. Trump is saying the ceasefire is over. Now, there was never really a ceasefire. Let's just put that out there because that's obvious. There's one thing that I need to point out about this campaign, this strategy. I want to bring up the fact that right now, Iran has temperatures over 100 degrees all day. So usually around 110, 113, could be higher later. The humidity in the coastal zone and coastal areas is very, very high, at least 70% or more. With this type of temperature, and including at night, it doesn't really cool down in the coastal zones near the water and all of that. The humidity is still high. Even if it went down to 90 degrees, it would be horrific, too hot. And the military cannot work in those conditions. The soldiers on the ground, the Marines on the ground cannot work in this hot of conditions. Show you. The military is in danger of heat stroke. Okay, so heat stroke is a condition caused by the body overheating. Obviously, this usually happens because of exposure to high temperatures or physical activity and high temperatures for too long. There are a few stages of heat injury, and heat stroke is the most most serious. It can happen if body temperature rises to 104 degrees Fahrenheit or higher. Heat stroke is most common in the summer months. It needs emergency care. If it's not treated, heat stroke can quickly damage the brain, heart, kidneys, and muscles. This damage gets worse the longer treatment is delayed, which increases the risk of serious complications or death. So, they talk about the warnings of this combat readiness, the illnesses of these life-threatening heat stroke. Okay, from minor heat cramps to life-threatening heat stroke, heat illnesses can take soldiers out of the fight, diminishing our Army's readiness. I'm trying to point this out because I'm seeing all these attacks and everything, and what happens is soldiers, they're wearing heavy combat gear, as you know, body armor, helmets. Then they're carrying around lots of equipment, at least 40 or 50 pounds, at least 40 some, I'd say even higher at times. They're carrying around all this weight of their equipment, and they're wearing these uniforms that are really just, they turn into ovens. They just become like an oven. And that's what causes these heat strokes and all that. They just can't work in this type of environment. So I was thinking about all this, isn't it too hot for a ground invasion? How is this going to work with our military? That it just can't be done at this time of year. That's why, I'll tell you, you had the Gulf War, 1990-91. That was it started from 17 January to 28 February 1991. They started in the winter because of obvious reasons. It is too hot. I have learned that the invasion of Iraq in 2003 was in March. So again, the attacks usually happen between November and March, so that it's the cooler months, because our people are not acclimated or used to the kind of weather that happens in the Middle East in the summer. So what we learn in this is that with the military strategy, what I'm seeing is this whole reigniting of the war against Iran, part 3, is that this is the first phases, meaning the air campaign, the air, as I said, the air and sea campaigns to wear down the Iranian defenses and forces, so that after that the ground invasion can take place. This is common how they do these strategies. That's how it's done. So I am thinking that in the fall is when the ground invasion would take place, for obvious reasons that I just went over. It's too hot right now to do that. So with that information, we are looking at the possibility of what Elder Joseph had said regarding what happens here in phase 3. It says, then the Russians will go down south to help their Arab allies, especially the Iranians, who will be attacked by the Americans. It doesn't say they're attacked by the Izzies, by the way. It says the Americans. The Americans will have captured the coastal zone of Iran after a fierce struggle. They'll capture it after a fierce struggle. This fierce struggle could be what is happening right now. This next part 3 of the air bombardment and and the naval strikes and bombardment. This could be the fierce struggle before they get this coastal zone, they capture this coastal zone. But they will not be able to advance inside of the country because of the great resistance they will receive. Now, it could be also the mountains, okay, that they're going to run into, that they're not familiar with. The still resistance from the Iranian army. They obviously are going to still have drones and missiles and all that because of that great resistance. But the Russians will sweep across Persia and destroy the American forces in the east. So we could be at this stage in the fall. I do think that's contingent with what happens with Russia and Europe. What happens with Russia and Ukraine, that needs to really wrap up. They need to end that war. It's terrible, as we all know. And if that happens, I think quickly Russia will move about heading down for helping in the Middle East. So we'll see. I'm just saying, the ground invasion cannot happen right now. I know he's saying, oh, we'll take Karg Island, we'll do this, we'll do that. It just physiologically can't happen because of the heat. It won't work for the military. And so, again, I'm thinking that timeline's going to be in the fall or winter. And so hopefully that makes sense to you. Although we're seeing this start up again and reignite, to me, it's going to be it's going to be air and naval. We'll see what happens, but that's my hypothesis, my perspective and ideas. If you wouldn't mind sharing yours, that would be great. I would love to know what you all think on this, because I think that part is really not talked about, the weather issue, because that is environmental and weather issues are part of the military takes into account. So I think that's being dismissed too easily or not talked about. But yeah, it's an issue as far as going on to any island over there, invading or whatever. Tell me what you think on this. Can you see what I'm talking about here? Do you agree? Do you think it's something else? Do you think this is part 3 and the final part of the war in Iran? Do you think this is leading to Elder Joseph's detailed prophecy on this particular portion? Anyway, I look forward to seeing your comments. Appreciate all of your support. I just want to remind you that always pray that God lessens what's to come. Our prayers can change and alter what happens with the prophecies. They're not etched in stone. They're for our repentance. They're for prayer. They're for staying vigilant in our lives, putting Christ first, because Christ has conquered the world already. In any case, I wanted to just say that so that you know our prayers are powerful. Thanks so much for watching and for following my channel. If you haven't subscribed, please consider subscribing. Like my videos if you think they're worth liking. Share my videos if you think they're worth sharing. Hit that notification bell so you can be notified when my videos come out. If you'd like to become a member, hit that join button at the below this video. We have 3 tiers. The light a candle tier for $2.99. That's tier 1. Tier 2, coffee hour Java. That's for $4.99 a month. And then the research rudder tier 3 for $8.99 a month. Become a part of my team. If you would like to support me sporadically, you can still buy me a cup of coffee and that link is in the description. Thanks so much for all of your support in any way you support me. God bless.